The last time I drove the Toyota Camry, I was impressed. Despite its age, it's still among the best to drive and live with in the class. And today, I want to see if the hybrid makes it even better. If you enjoy fun, detailed car content without fluff, consider subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications. For the 6th model year of this generation, the only change that we saw was new wheels and a new reservoir blue for the SE Nightshade trim. And to get you acquainted with the trims, you will have the LE and the XLE, and then their sporty alter egos, the SE and XSE. The car I have today is an XLE. All of them, though, will get things like standard LED headlights with daytime running lights. You can actually opt for a fancier LED headlight on the XLE, but that's not here on this car. In fact, that's one point that I do want to bring up on the Camry, and this goes for a lot of other Toyota products. There is an endless slew of different packages, except there's not an endless selection of cars. So if you're furiously building your car on their website, the chances that you're going to find that specific package in the color that you want is probably pretty low. Anyway, another thing that you can get on the XLE trim is a 360 view camera. But if it's anything like the other 360 cameras available for Toyota's early 2000s video games will rival the graphics. Before we continue, I'd like to thank Royal South Toyota in Bloomington, Indiana for letting me test out various Camrys to make this video possible. They have a friendly staff and are deeply invested in the community. If you're in the market, check them out. So while you can still get some fancy things on the Camry, you can also go base with the LE trim, but there's actually a substantial MPG incentive to that car. And part of that's going to come from these base-looking 16-inch steel wheels with hubcaps, which use lower speed, skinnier tires. You will have 52 miles per gallon combined, which is very much encroaching on Prius territory, and 6 miles per gallon better combined than the standard hybrid models, which I would already consider 46 miles per gallon combined to be exceptional. So the standard car had a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated, direct injected, and port fuel injected inline 4, making around 203, 206 horsepower depending on your outfit. But with our hybrid, we're actually going to have a detuned 2.5 liter, still that D4S system, so dual injection, but now we have a hybrid system attached to it with one drive motor powering the front wheels only. Compared to the standard 2.5 liter, the hybrid wakes this car up. Yes, the horsepower rating is very similar. We're talking 208 ponies and an unspecified amount of torque, but it doesn't really matter because this thing gets to its peak power pretty quick due to the eCVT, which is still a continuously variable transmission. It actually uses a separate motor, and that changes the ratio of the transmission. So when I get on it, immediately, right where it needs to be. Plus, the instantaneous torque from the electric side helps fill the torque gap while the engine gears up. Unfortunately, you will have to go for the Dino Sauce model if you want all-wheel drive. If you want a hybrid 4x4 Toyota sedan, you'll have to go with the new Corolla or whatever the Crown is. And the other benefit to it is you're going up hills, you get on the gas, there's no lugging of the engine like there is with the 8-speed automatic. I easily prefer this despite the very similar power output, and I think its ability to get down to business quick should help it with this 0 to 60. For this test, I have traction control shut off, AC is off, and we are in sport mode. Oh, that's definitely quicker than the standard car. 60. Off the line, you can tell it still kind of limits it there a little bit. There's no wheel slip whatsoever. At 7.2 seconds to 60, it's quicker than the standard car. But again, the main thing that you're going to appreciate with this engine outside of the fuel economy is the more refined, quicker response. I'll keep styling talk to a minimum here, but I think that overall, the character lines and everything in here is nicely sculpted. It's not too overbearing for the personality of the car, but it does have a little bit of flair. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I'm glad that there are some exposed exhaust tips. And all hybrids get taillights with darker accents and an external trunk lid release button. As is Toyota tradition, you get a blue clue on the badges hinting at what's under the hood. The biggest wheels you can get for the Camry are 19s, and those come with the SE Nightshade and XSE. With the SE and XLE getting 18s, and the aforementioned 16 Steelies on the LE. Everything else is alloy, but at least all cars will have proximity unlock and lock. Now, when it comes to highway response, plenty. Now, it definitely numbs it down in eco, but in sport and normal, does what it needs to. Granted, it doesn't sound glamorous while doing it. Cruising at 65 miles per hour. Road noise in here is subdued, but not hush quiet. Wind noise from the mirrors and tire noise do persist. So I'd call this average, maybe a touch better compared to the rest of the cars in the segment, with an advantage over most small SUVs in my opinion. It's a reasonable assumption that a lot of people are cross-shopping sedans with crossovers, and the biggest thing that you're going to notice if you're contemplating a RAV4 Hybrid or this is the seating position and cabin layout. So here you're going to be sitting lower, your legs are going to be stretched out further, a little bit better thigh support, and typically that's going to have an advantage if you're doing a lot of long distance driving, but the downside is that the dashboard is going to be higher relative to you. So visibility out the front is just a little bit worse, but you still do have nice big windows on the side, so I wouldn't really call visibility an issue. But for the thick-thighed homies out there, this has a tighter cockpit feeling compared to most small SUVs. It's still good for tall people and by no means is cramped, but if you desire a more open and airy space, this isn't that. One thing that is comfortable are these seats. They're not bolstered very heavily, but they're soft, and all Camry hybrids will come with lumbar adjustment. So no matter how much money you spend, you're still gonna be comfortable. But if you go up to the SE specs, you'll have soft text, which is a nice durable leather alternative, or you can go for the standard leather in the XSE and XLE. You can get ventilated seats on the top specs, but it's in a package, as is a sunroof. In fact, you have to opt for that on any Camry. Heated seats will come in the higher trim models as standard, and those are available on the LE and SE. Plus, a heated steering wheel is an option on almost all Camrys, but apparently the SE Nightshade is too icy for either of those. All cars also have nice soft touch rest points for your elbows. There's no padding where your knees go, but at the very least, it feels like a durable interior in here. Because of a sturdy build with good fit and finish and a straightforward cockpit. I have analog controls for my climate control, volume and tune dials, physical buttons here on the steering wheel that are not outfitted in piano black plastic, so they'll age a little bit better. They even put some soft touch up here on the dash along with some cool textures since we are in the top trim. Now when it comes to tech, the Camry is not exactly at the forefront. So you'll have a 7-inch touchscreen as standard, or you can jump to a 9-inch unit that'll come here on the XLE and XSE and is still available if you can find it on the lower trims. I don't hate it. There's not a big jump in performance. If you go with the larger setup, it just looks a little bit better. The overall UI just feels dated, doesn't have a super quick response time, and the resolution is just okay. At least it's fairly simple to use. You have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. It's not wireless. That should come in the next refresher redesign here soon with Toyota's new UI, just not here yet. Now, the last car I drove had a 4.2-inch multifunction display. This one has a 7-inch. It doesn't house a speedometer. There's not a tachometer in the hybrid. So the functionality of it's limited. I don't really see a huge draw to it over the regular multifunction display. But what I do like is that you have push button start standard on every hybrid. The XLE and XSE do make an argument for themselves with stuff like a wireless charger and the availability of a heads-up display and 9-speaker JBL sound system with subwoofer. Standard, you'll just have 6 speakers, which perform adequately, but for those who want to listen at higher volumes or desire more bass, I would recommend that JBL. Overall, it is a bit dated and lacks expensive finishes, but it's comfortable and feels high quality for the price. The back seat of the Toyota Camry Hybrid is honestly borderline luxurious. So here's why. I have long seat cushions that offer a good amount of support. I have just enough headroom here at 6'3", even with the front seat set to a comfortable yet not excessive position for myself. I have just enough knee room, but even if it were to graze the seat, it's padded with leather on the back. And on the XLE and XSE, you will have rear seat vents, but unfortunately you'll have to accessorize in order to get USB ports back here. There's also no option for heated rear seats. I'm a little disappointed to see such a large drivetrain hump here, but I can't complain too much when you could comfortably transport 4 people over 6 foot for an extended period of time. The trunk of the Toyota Camry is more than accommodable for even a somewhat picky car reviewer, offering plenty of width, a pretty respectable height, and decent length. I like how you have rear seat releases, that's standard. And I also admire how the Camry Hybrid does not take a cut in cargo area or passenger space when compared to the gas-only model. Plus, you get a spare tire standard. I wouldn't call this segment leading, but if you're going on a vacation, it should work just fine. Now, if you get either of these sporty hybrid trims, you're going to be gifted with a sport-tuned suspension, which I did actually enjoy with the SE. It was still pretty forgiving, but just kept things a little bit more tidy. But now that it's been a couple months since I've driven that, and I'm pedaling this XLE over some pretty abysmal roads, even with me trying to speed up so this WRX doesn't ride my ass, the Camry actually keeps everything pretty composed, despite the broken and uneven pavement, and it's very comfortable. Maybe the RAV4 could take a little bit more abuse before it starts to kind of break into the cabin, but for most neglected pavement, the Camry XLE does a great job and will provide just a slightly softer experience than the sport-tuned models. And while I wouldn't call either a game changer, I do think I prefer the setup of the SE. And both come across a touch more forgiving than its closest competitor, the Accord, which does have better interior space and a more upscale feel in my opinion. I haven't driven the hybrid variant, which has a distinct approach and even forgoes a transmission. Excluding the LE Hybrid, the Accord Hybrid matches its gas mileage and is also kind of fun on a back road, so something I would consider, especially if you consider yourself an enthusiast. The Camry has never been the most enthusiastic vehicle, but the new one is still not exactly engaging. However, it's capable, definitely. The steering itself is neither quick or slow, but the good suspension and independent suspension all around keeps the thing tidy. It really handles well, despite this even having some pronounced body roll. Usually when you have a softer vehicle, throwing around twisty roads with imperfections in the middle there will cause them to be disturbed, but in the Camry's case, it really just keeps tracking the way that you would want it to. When you start to bring it up to higher speeds, you feel more of the benefits of having precise steering that isn't overboosted and unnatural like some of Toyota's products from the past. Again, this isn't something that's giving me feedback, so it's still not super fun to drive, but it is confidence-inspiring and sure-footed, and just a tad more so if you go with the sport suspension. Additionally, the brakes. If you have to jump on them quick, there's a little bit of delay there, and the regen system kind of makes it feel just a touch less natural than the standard car, although I think you would get used to it pretty quick. It's not a huge deal in my opinion. And they still definitely bring the car to a halt quickly and confidently. They will also come with autonomous braking standard along with adaptive cruise and lane assist. The lower trims offer blind spot monitoring, but it is not standard. And while not to the degree of some small SUVs, it is still a pretty easy car to drive. That visibility out the front is good for a sedan. As I mentioned, you have big side windows and reactive steering and a responsive powertrain. And that's actually the reason why I think I'm going to recommend the hybrid over the gas-powered car. Not exactly efficiency, because that's kind of a double-edged sword. Why? Because even though this gets 14 or 20 miles per gallon better than a standard Camry, it costs $2,200 to choose the hybrid or $2,500 in the case of the LE, which means you would have to drive about 53 or 58,000 miles just to break even on fuel costs, assuming $4 a gallon and you're hitting the EPA combined ratings. You should also keep in mind that the battery has a somewhat conservative lifespan of 12 years depending on many variables and may cost $3 or $4 to replace. If you're trying to reduce your emissions, the hybrid does have a notable leg up, even considering the carbon impact from battery production. It's just not a whole lot cheaper, all things considered. However, even if I were buying something and planning on keeping it 15 years or so, this just offers a more satisfying driving experience, which would push me to take the plunge on the hybrid upgrade. When it comes to reliability, this generation initially struggled with the powertrain control module. After a reflash, problems dropped off. Some also had qualms with the hybrid leaking gas from the cap. There was also a fuel system and pump recall. Some people have reported bad batteries and a draw on the system. Others reported interior rattles. I will add I noticed a slight plastic creaking noise when I drove a 2019 with 90,000 miles. And again, hybrid batteries have lasted around 12 years in the past. We will see if the newer lithium packs make it longer. Mileage is usually less of a factor than time. The Camry as a whole has a lot to offer. While it won't spook the engineers at Audi or Mercedes, the family sedan from Toyota has adapted to the cross-apocalypse well. A posh ride, quality interior, family-friendly space, and confident handling makes it a stellar choice for the person who values practicality and refined road manners. If you're trying to find an upscale sedan with swanky looks at a reasonable price, the Camry is a good pick, but a lot of cars do that these days. But not many also offer this kind of reliability, and the hybrid just makes it even more attractive. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like to help me battle the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell for more. And thank you to my very loyal patrons. I'll catch you in the next one.